Hey, how you doing? Nice day in Richmond today. I'd like to talk about DNA. I have a sister who lives over here on the other side of Richmond. She was telling me, "Oh, you ought to get your DNA. See what your, you know, heritage can show you or whatever." I said, "I think about it." So over Christmas, I got a gift. It was a kit from Ancestry to send my samples in so my DNA could be read. But I'll tell you, it was sort of surprising. Yeah. So, sent in my sample, came back with a bunch of information. So, I talked to my sister. She had it done the previous year, and she had her results. Her results were different than mine. That's right. She was like 1% Jewish and 1% Scandinavian and this and that, so on and so forth. You know, mine was 30% Native American, 8% Jewish, and so on and so forth. All these little fractions, probably going back through each generation. It's the only way I can figure it out. But it wasn't the same as my sister's. And I remember a while back, about 6 or 8 months ago, I had a good friend of mine that passed away, and his wife sent me a package with some pictures, some his ring, his watch, his hat, his Navy hat. His name was Rodney. I used to tell him, "Hey, your dad probably named you after me because I was born in November. He was born in March, the following year." And we used to laugh about it. So, as over the years went, when I was little, his dad used to come by and pick me up and say, "Come on, spend the weekend with the kids, Rodney and Roger." And I'd go over and spend the weekend with them and had a good time. And we grew up together. Now get this. We had no connection far as being related whatsoever. But there was something that was quite peculiar. Personality traits, they were very much the same. And over the years, growing up, I remember my mom, she said, Rodney's father, his name was Albert, when he was growing up, he worked for my grandfather on the farm. He liked my mom. And during the war, Second World War, he joined the army and he went off to the Rhine. I think it was the Rhine. He was there at the Rhine when they crossed the Rhine to go into Germany. I think it was with the Patton Division. I mean, he's a tough little bugger, but he was a nice little bugger. He was a carpenter. Yeah. He was a carpenter all his life, and he was a good carpenter. And Rodney, he was a carpenter. I'm a carpenter. But his personality was the same as mine. There was things that he has done that I have done. What the hell's going on here? And so when I tell my sister this, that our DNA don't match, and I actually got a picture in that package from when he passed away of him holding his little dog and some other items, some Navy papers. That's another thing. I joined the Navy, and when I came home on leave, he talked to me about it, and he went right down and joined the Navy. I mean, we quit school and did this. And he sort of like followed me a little bit. There was quite a stretch that we hadn't seen each other, that he had did things that I did too. So there's like a somewhat of a connection there, you know. Do you possibly think that maybe our DNA is closer than my sister's DNA? Oh, she came up with all sorts of excuses. Oh, it's like this because of this, because of that. But it don't seem that way. The only thing I can contest to it, am I a byproduct of another father? Which I think is funny. Here it is. I'm what, 73 years old? I'm just kind of like figuring out maybe my dad wasn't my dad. I probably had another dad. Is that why Albert would come over the weekends and pick me up and bring me over there? You know, like, yeah, had us all together. I don't know. But if so, that's okay. I don't mind. I miss old Rod, though. He was funny. We used to have some good times. Yeah. We worked in Texas together building houses. That was a great time. We had some times, I'll tell you what. Mm-hmm. He was a good boy. Up and got in a motorcycle accident a couple of years ago. And he had cancer and passed on. But I was surprised to get that package. I had no idea. I had no idea. Maybe he knew something I didn't know. But whatever. I think maybe I'm a forget. Hey, life goes on, you know. A lot of strange things happen up there in the North Country. Yeah, good, man, good. Yeah. Well, that's about one of my little stories for the day. Hey, I got another little story for you. When I was in the Navy, I served aboard the USS Boston out of Charlestown Naval Yard. It was a dry dock Navy facility where they repaired boats. Like I say, I served aboard the Boston. The Boston was quite the ship that was in and out. We did a lot of traveling. We didn't spend much time there. But it was sort of different. The first day I went aboard the ship, coming out of Norfolk Naval Air Station, people are very inquisitive where you're from when you go aboard. And of course, hey, we know somebody from that area. Hey, we'll introduce you to him. And I was introduced to a fella that we became very good friends. He was from the hometown next to where I lived. I mean, my town was so small, you couldn't even pronounce the name. It had like, it was, and this is a French name anyway. It was sort of a tough name. So, it's actually, the name was West Chazy. Chazy, French word. And every time we had mail call, they used to go, West Crazy. You got that right. And he was from another small town. And I never knew him. Granted, we grew up 5 miles apart. But he was a good fella. Became a very good friend of mine. Over the years, I knew him aboard the Boston. He was an upstanding little character. As a matter of fact, he sort of helped me get a job within his department. Sort of looked out for me. And there was a time, several years down the road, I had probably about a year to go before I got out of the Navy, and he had just months, and he would have been discharged. We used to talk about everything, you know. When you're out at sea, there's not much to do but talk about different things, likes, dislikes, what you want, what you want to do with your future, what you're going to do, and things like that. You become very, very close. It's like a bond. Military people have bonds with other people. That's just not the same as on the outside. No, because you watch out for each other's back. Out here, it's every man for himself. Yeah, matter of fact, your friends out here will trash you before they do anything, and just not the same. So this particular time we came back from the Mediterranean, there was a large party that was given to the ship by Boston for, you know, our service. I had a big write-up, Boston Heroes Return in the Boston Globe, and they made a party for us over in the North Station. So on a ship you have two different shifts. Like you have a port and starboard watch. One will stay on the ship while the other one's off, because there's always got to be somebody on the ship. You never leave a ship empty. So the first night, Jim and I and several other friends, we went over to the party, which was pretty good. You know, we had met a few nurses over in Cambridge, and we brought them along with us for, you know, dates and stuff. Had a great time. And came back probably about 1 o'clock in the morning after dropping the girls off, and went back to the ship. We had to be to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that was our shift. That's when it started. So we worked the day. Till about 5 o'clock, Jim comes down and he says, "Hey, you want to go to the party tonight? We'll get standbys, and we'll go back over." Okay, nothing else to do. So we got some standbys, which was relatively easy in our department. Somebody that wasn't going over any place would just take your shift, then you'd pay them back. Well, it was Jim Arnold. He was a yeoman, and Brown, he was like a bookkeeper. It was 4 of us. And we discussed prior to going that we would take no automobiles. You just get on the MTA, the train, and go over to North Station. You have a few beers, and then you can come back on the MTA. It ran all night. So that's what we planned. So we go over that evening, and prior to that, Jim said, "Do you have an extra clean uniform?" Which I did. So I lent him my uniform, my extra uniform. He's the same size I was. People in the Navy are all little anyway. Most of us. Anyway, we go over, we have a good time. Come upwards about 8 o'clock. The yeoman, Arnold, and myself decided that we wanted to go back to the ship. So we told Jim and Brown that we were going back to the ship. Is there anything I could bring back for you? Like glasses. We used to actually take glasses from every bar across the universe. Wherever we were, we'd always end up with a glass or two for our collection. We had quite a collection from across the world, Mediterranean, so on, Barcelona, Spain, Italy, you name it, Puerto Rico. We had a glass collection. That was our thing. So, yeah, he says, "Take this glass back for me, will you?" I said, "Okay." And Brown and Jim had met two nursing students there at the party. And so we went back to the ship. Here I am. I put the glass away when I get back in our collection. I go to bed because I got to work like 8 o'clock in the morning. No, it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. That was the end of my shift. It started at 4 till 8. And watch, they used to call it. So, come about 4 o'clock, the master at arms would go around waking up people to start their watches. Well, this guy came in the compartment and he walked over to my bed, and it was a bed. If you call it a bed, it was like a bunk held together by chains hanging off the ceiling. It was like, that's the way they were. A bed, whatever. And he started hollering, and all the lights come on, and he started saying, "You're dead. You're dead. You've been reported that you have died in a car accident." And I go, "Hold on a minute. I was in no car accident. I'm here." And he would say, "No. They called in. They called the quarterdeck, said you and Brown were killed in a car accident." And I looked above me, and the bunk had not been slept in. That was Jim's bunk. What had happened was, they decided to bring these two girls home that lived in Revere. And they went back, must have took a subway far as Charlestown, went underneath the bridge. That's where everybody, Mystic River Bridge, that's where everybody would park their car in a parking lot. You pay so much. And he picked his car up, and going over the Mystic River Bridge, he must have been hitting some high speeds because he hit a pillar. The pillars that hold up these overhead roads. And just demolished the car. It was a Chevrolet 327, really a fast car, beautiful fast car. Yeah, he demolished it. He killed all four of them. And when they brought him down to the morgue, they identified him as myself with the name on the inside of the uniform. On every uniform, there's a name with your serial number. It's under the corners, like it had Pat Note under the corner, and in the back along the belt line, it had Pat Note, stenciled in, because that's how you identify them with your service number. So they automatically assumed it was me. They called the Boston because the uniform had markings of the ship, where the ship came, and that was the USS Boston. That was up on here. And the rate, my rate and Jim's rate were the same. We were both petty officers. So automatically it fit. And believe it or not, somehow that night, I sort of died right along with him. I really did. You would have to know this guy, Jim, to just appreciate his friendship. He would tell me all sorts of things out at sea. You'd sit there and talk. You'd be probably 1,000 miles out in the middle of the ocean, bobbing around in a cork. And you'd say, "Oh, I'd like to do this, and get married, have some kids. I'd like to have this, like to have that." And of course, that's what you do. You kind of like dream, nothing else to do but dream up stuff. Well, as time went on, I was discharged about 8 months later, and here I am. I just get married, and I got my glass collection. And in that glass collection, of course, was that glass that I had taken from that party. I don't know if you imagine things, or is there really some sort of, well, people would say ghostly things that associate themselves with an inanimate object, you know? Like, well, um, I recall the glass would sort of shudder in the cabinet. I put it in the cabinet. You could hear it hitting the other glasses like a tingle. And I automatically assumed that there's some sort of spirit or something within this, you know? I brought this spirit with me. And I put it on the windowsill, and I put a rose in it. And I've never seen water evaporate so fast in all my life. And, you know, and I'm going, there's something here. I kind of like said, well, you know, I gotta get rid of this. And then over the years, what this guy told me out at sea came truth for me. Like he said, he said, I have a job when I get out of here. It'll be on the Plattsburgh Air Force Base. And I go, no, Jim, they don't have civilians doing this. I knew some people that work there. Oh, yes, he said. I said, okay. So he told me, that he was going to be a chef at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Okay. Then he tells me how many kids he's going to have. And what is he going to do? And things like that, And it may be a little bit peculiar, but gee whiz. Yeah, go ahead. Think about it. It all happened to me. Everything. From the number of children that he wanted to where he's going to work. When I got out of the Navy, I was the first one hired on the Plattsburgh Air Force Base for that particular job. How did he know this? Was he telling me something? And then there was another thing that he told me that really set me back. All I'd like to have is $10,000 to give it to my brother who brought me up so he can buy a house. Yeah. You know what the insurance was on Jim? $10,000, right to the penny. He knew. He knew his fate. Yet, that's the way it seemed. So like I said, I removed the glass. Seemed a little spooky. I don't think I was ready for that yet. If I'd have known now, I'd have kept the glass. But I'll tell you this now, that I think of him often because he was such a good friend. Got me out of a lot of pretty bad jams. He kind of watched out for me like a big brother. And after all these years, I'm still here. I've had a lot of close calls, and I've had a lot of, like, somebody watching over me. Could that be it? If it's whatever, I'll find out someday. Hey, this is my story for the day. Take care.